Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So every single year, beneficiaries of Social Security usually receive some type of increase through the cost of living adjustment, but we're going to be covering the downside of what those have been, at least over the past couple of decades. Plus, even though a lot of Americans on Social Security are struggling to keep up because of all the inflation that's been taking place and the cost of living adjustments not keeping up with what the actual inflation has been, some Americans receiving Social Security have recently been doing something that's been causing them to actually live their best life and live even better than they have before. So we're going to be covering what they're doing. But before we go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Plus, if you would like to receive up to $200 in free stocks or $200 in free cash, in a pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to Robinhood. All you have to do is once you click on that link is just sign up for a free account and then link your bank account. You do not have to make a deposit to Robinhood in order to receive the free stock. And then once you do so, Robinhood will be sending you that one free stock worth all the way up to $200. And if you'd rather just have the cash, all you have to do is once you receive the free stock is just sell it for what it's worth and then transfer the cash value right back to your bank account. Okay, so diving right into our lead story of today's video, and of course that is Social Security and costing adjustments. So every single year, people that receive Social Security do receive some type of cost of living adjustment, whether it's as high as like 8.7% as we saw just a couple of years ago, or as low as, let's say, like 1%, 2%, or perhaps even 3%. Every single year there is something just to keep up with inflation, even though it doesn't necessarily keep up with as high as inflation really ends up being. So we're going to be covering this article here by the Motley Fool that's titled Social Security COLA, the ugly secret they don't tell you about. So they say, don't look for this problem with Social Security COLA to be addressed anytime soon. Many retirees eagerly await the middle of October. That's when the Social Security Administration will announce the cost of living adjustment for 2025. More money in your pocket is a good thing, right? Yes, but there's more to the story. Social Security COLAs come with the ugly secret that they won't tell you about. The increases, if any, will probably be too little and too late. So whatever the Social Security COLA is for next year, it probably won't be enough to offset your higher living expenses. The 3.2% benefit increase received in 2024 wasn't as much as retirees needed, neither was the much greater 8.7% adjustment last year. The culprit is the inflation metric the SSA uses to calculate annual COLAs, the consumer price index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. The CPIW doesn't adequately capture the higher costs seniors incur, largely because it doesn't give a high enough weight to healthcare expenses. How significant is this problem? The Senior Citizens League compared Social Security COLAs based on the CPIW with what the adjustments would have been using a different inflation metric designed to reflect seniors' costs better. The organization found the COLA was lower than it should have been in 7 of the past 10 years. Instead of a 3.2% adjustment this year, the Senior Citizens League believes the increase should have been 4%. And of course, they are using a metric called the Consumer Price Index for the elderly, or the CPIE, which is usually a good bit higher than what the CPIW is. Now, of course, there are different bills out there that would make it so whatever the higher of the two, whether it's the CPIW or the CPIE, whichever is higher between those two, they would end up going with as far as the cost of living adjustment goes. That way, if the CPIW is higher in some years, they go with the CPIW. Whereas perhaps the CPIE is much higher, than in that case, they would end up going with the CPIE. Now, in some other news, even though, with this whole problem that's going on where people aren't able to keep up with inflation, we're seeing higher prices every single year. And sure, we are receiving cost of living adjustments, but we're finding out, at least according to that past article, that it's just not keeping up with what inflation actually is. So even though you might be receiving another $20 or $30 in each monthly check for your Social Security, what you're actually spending, even on the same goods and services every single month, are perhaps going up, let's say like $40, $50, or even $60. So you're spending double of what you're actually receiving for your Social Security check, and you're just falling further and further behind. If you find yourself in that situation, you're definitely not alone, and some Americans on Social Security are doing this one thing to actually make their checks go much, much further, and they're finding out that they can actually live their best life, perhaps even ever, by doing this one thing. And it's not always easy, but we're going to be covering this article here by Business Insider, where this one lady moved to Turkey. Yes, Turkey, a completely different country, so she can live on a smaller income. What her Social Security check is, she's spending much less in Turkey than what she did in the United States. That's because Turkey has a much lower cost of living. So according to Business Insider, 8 years ago, Deborah Crockett decided it was time for a change. She and her then husband were doing well in the US. They were earning decent wages, owned a home, and had a couple of cars, but after working her whole life, most recently as a director of retail sales, she decided she was ready to see the world. BI reviewed documents verifying Crockett's expenses. When converted to US dollars, her rent is $463 a month, her electric bills are $25 a month, her water bill is just over $1 a month, and her internet is just over $11 a month. Even with the nearly $200 it takes to renew her residency in Turkey each year, her Social Security check is $2,929 a month, verified by BI, which is more than enough to cover her basic expenses. So you can see there, even though she actually gets a pretty decent Social Security check, just under $3,000, that's a lot more than the average, which right now is $1,900. Even if you're just receiving the average of $1,900, you can see there, once again, she's spending $463 on rent, $25 on her electric bills, under $1 for water, and then of course the water bill is $11 a month. Of course, they're not factoring in food and other things like that, entertainment, but she could easily live on, under $1,000 a month, even factoring in food and entertainment being another $500 in addition to what she's already spending. Now, we're going to be covering this article here also by Go Banking Rates, which covers 10 countries that are quite popular for Social Security beneficiaries to move to. And even though this is probably very difficult for most people to do, I mean, it's very hard to just pick up and leave your friends and family in the U.S. and leave to a country that's completely unfamiliar to you. You may not even speak the language. Keep in mind, there's a lot of Americans that do this thing. It's a very real possibility, something you can definitely do. And in these different countries, they actually have these things called like quote unquote expat communities, where a lot of Americans are living close by. They hang out, they go out to dinner, and they kind of form these groups. So it's something that's definitely possible to do and something you can definitely keep in mind. So these are the 10 countries, according to Go Banking Rates, where you can retire on just Social Security. So the first one on this list is Panama. And you can see on each country we're going to go through, it is going to show the monthly cost of living for a single person, as well as for a couple. And these can vary greatly depending on where you live, the neighborhood, the house, how big the house is, how often you eat out, your entertainment, things like that. So for Panama, for example, they say for a single person it is going to be $1,736. Next on the list, we have Costa Rica. The next on the list is Italy. Obviously, this one can vary greatly depending where you live, if it's in a bigger city or if perhaps it's the countryside. Then we have Thailand, Greece, Mexico. Mexico is very popular just because it's so close to the United States, where you can kind of fly back and forth, and it's not that long of a flight if you want to fly back to the U.S. to see friends and family. It's definitely a possibility. Then we have Colombia, Portugal, Ecuador, and finally Spain. So let me know in the comment section below. Is this something that you've perhaps considered for yourself? I would definitely recommend perhaps looking into it. Maybe not going out on a whim and just moving to a country before actually visiting. Maybe you want to visit that country for a couple weeks to see if it's a real possibility, if you could see yourself living there. Check out the different rental spaces, stuff like that to see your comfort level. But it is a real possibility, because keep in mind the rent in a lot of places here in the United States is going to run you like $1,800, $2,000 per month, whereas you can actually get a really nice apartment for like, let's say $400 to $500 in all of these. In a lot of these countries, the food costs are much lower, transportation much lower, entertainment much lower, because your dollar is going to go much further in these other countries. But let me know your thoughts in comments below on that. But that's all I have for today's video. I certainly hope you enjoyed and found value out of it. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next video.